Hello and welcome back to Mikey's Flightdeck. Today I will show you how you can build this EFIS panel for your Boeing 737 home cockpit. Six years ago everything started here. I made my first version of the EFIS panel here on my homemade wooden CNC. At that point I didn't know anything about panels making. I just wanted to find out what can be done on the CNC, and the panel was never functional. But it was my first attempt of making panels. And then you know the story. I made the overhead panel, the pedestal, and finally the MIP. And I gathered much experience during making all these panels. And now 6 years later I make my second attempt of making the EFIS panel. This time on my laser. It's not that it can't be done on the CNC. If you have one at home, then you're ready to go. It will just speed up the process a little bit. You have seen now my workflow when it comes to positioning pieces on the laser. I'm laying down a piece of paper, cutting out the outside shape, and can then position my workpiece on the inside of this paper. And even if the paper is really thin, you can feel how the piece should be positioned. This is how I've done all the cutting of the masking tape. And this is also the same method I'm using for all my engravings. After the good experience I've made with these heat inserts in the bottom plate of the MIP, I will also use them in this panel here. They will be used to mount the three panel layers on top of this box here, where all the electronic and mechanical stuff is hidden in here. And this is way more important, they will be used in my new version of the combined Rotary and Encoder switch. My first version of this case was a little bit annoying when it came to disassembly this whole construction. I now have split this frame into two parts, a bottom and a top part, and when you have mounted all the inside components like the shaft and the gears, then you can mount the top part on it and secure it with the screw that went into the heat insert. The top of this frame holds already really well because of the two indexing pins, but the screw will secure it at the end. I will make also an updated version of my dual rotary encoder case, and then you can update all your pedestal encoders if you have built this after my plans. You can insert those heat inserts by hand with your soldering iron or use such a so-called stealth press. You can find a cheap hardware kit with all the mechanical components online and then print out all the other needed parts. And with this press you can guide your soldering iron straight down to the place where it is needed and it will go back automatically. So you can insert, for example, this box underneath, then insert the heat insert and press the tool down. That's it. The heat insert comes in up here in the top part of the rotary encoder case, and it is modeled so that the underside of it can stand flush on a table, and so you can put it underneath your press or on your table and you can easily press in the heat insert from the top. During the build process you're seeing in this video, there was the EFIS weekend in Lelystad. And I took this on-progress design with me and showed it to the audience, and we discussed that it's a shame that it is not possible to limit the number of positions for these small rotary switches, only for the big ones that come with such a big ring. And then it came to my mind that it could be possible not for this rotary switch, but maybe I can construct something that limits the movement of the switch. And yes, it was so easy, because of the fact that I've switched more and more to a fully 3D printed design and not anymore using Home Depot components. I was able to modify this design and inserting a small stop block that limits the movement. Let's have a look at this in detail. Down here on top of the gear of the outer shaft, you can see this small block I have modeled. And this block will collide during the turning with this structure here. Let's show this. There, it collides and doesn't let the rotary switch move more to the right. So when you install this, make sure that this rotary switch is on the, for this panel, most right position, so the second position. And then install the gear so that it is in this state. The block is colliding with this structure here. And then it is already on the second position and you can still move it to the left to the first position. But these two are the only possible positions for this switch. After a little bit trial and error, I want to give you a conclusion of the modification of this switch here. I had a problem that the shaft here didn't come out again after I pushed it. And this is because inside here there was too much friction to the shaft. And so it was better for me to drill this black part of the switch with a 3mm drill. And this shaft is a 2mm shaft here, so there is enough room for the shaft here to be in there if you are not too accurate during the drilling process. Don't widen this small ring here, because this ring could be destroyed, and it is a guide for this upper part here, so it is centered in the switch here. The next thing are the springs here. When after your modification the turning here of the switch doesn't need enough force, then you can widen this spring again a little bit. Or if it's too hard, then you can push the spring together here. Now it comes to engrave these tiny black knobs. Here I can't use my paper method, because even if I'm not engraving with pressurized air, a little bit of air is flowing above the lens to keep it clean from smoke, and this amount of air could be enough for those tiny buttons to be blown away. And so I'm using a piece of leftover HDF board, engraving the outlines in here and inserting then the buttons there, so they can wiggle and will be held in place during the engraving process. My camera is not made for very good detail shots, but we have to talk a little bit about knobs here. The last days I was printing and painting and engraving knobs, and I want to show you the different results that came out. Up here there was my first try with a resin printed button with a little mold inside of the button for a good feeling when you get your fingers on the button. And I engraved it, but I wasn't really satisfied how clear the engraving was. Here I made another try with
two engravings. One pass horizontal and one pass vertical. And this came out really good. Not as bright as these ones here. I come to these now in a second. But I think when it is backlighted, it will be very good visible. Here I have a filament printed knob with white filament painted black and then engraved. By the way, these knobs are resin printed with white resin here. Yeah, and it has a flat surface and then it is engraved. And you can see it comes out really clear and bright. Here I try to model also a mold into the button. The layers are visible in this mold. It feels okay, but not as good as the resin printed mold here. But again, a clear engraving. Down here I tried to print out a molded button with TPU so that it is a little bit flexible. The button is bendable a little bit, but with such small items here, you can feel the flexibility underneath your finger. So it didn't come out as good as I hoped so. But for now, my choice to use is this resin printed button with a mold. If I wouldn't have a resin printer, then I would definitely go with this flat button here. It comes out really clean and looks absolutely good. Here you can see the two types of button caps compared to each other. Down here you can see the resin printed ones, and up here we have the filament printed ones. Both variants are printed so that the text comes out engraved and is filled with white wax. I have done this with a filament printed type 2, but just because I didn't have a white filament here at the moment. You can see those two letters here are absolutely comparable. Maybe the inside of the R is a little bit better here at the resin printed version than at the filament printed one. I have printed this with a 0.25mm nozzle, but I even have here a 0.15mm nozzle. Maybe the results could be even better then, but honestly spoken, when you're sitting in your cockpit, I don't think that you could see the differences between these two types here. And if you want to print out this in one pass here, and you have a multicolor printer, then I would recommend that you print this upside here down on your print surface, and then you will come out with an absolutely smooth surface here. I have used, in my case here, an ironing technique to flatten the surface here, and it's absolutely fantastic here. So I definitely will use now this method here instead of the resin printing process with all the washing and hardening after that.
And this completes the physical build of this EFIS panel here. The configuration part is not very complicated. There are only buttons and some encoders in this build here, but I want to take the chance to show you all the configuration that is needed and how I am organizing this cable mess here in a separate video. I can't await the moment when I'm using this in my Homecockpit. And then it came to my mind that I can already use this. I just have to make a dedicated configuration file for MobiFlight and PMDG, and then I can use this without any change of the hardware on my desktop. And this will be a game changer for my rare simulator sessions. So even if you don't want to build a full-size home cockpit, then you can use this design as an improvement for your desktop simulator. As always, you will find all the needed files to cut out and engrave the panels, as well as all the 3D print files, and this time in many different variations. If you want to fill the buttons with wax, if you want to engrave them, if you want to have the small knobs here with a mold or flat, take whatever you want. It is all there in the download package in the member section of my website. So stay tuned for the configuration video, and after this for the build process of the MCP, and this will be a huge step in the cockpit. So if you don't want to miss these upcoming episodes, subscribe to my channel to stay informed about any upcoming new video from me. And I hope we'll see us soon back on the flight deck.